Now that we've looked at paragraph construction and paragraph style in the abstract, let's get specific. Let's think about how does this look in a real essay that works and in one that fails. Because I find looking at the fails actually help me more as a writer than seeing how somebody else's worked correctly. So we're going back to our student descriptive essay and the AI descriptive essay fail to see what works and what doesn't. First student essay, tree climbing. Here is, or it could be, the thesis of this paragraph, though you could also argue the thesis is spread over several sentences, which is not something you want to do in the essays that you are writing, which are so short. You really want to limit it to one sentence. But this final sentence here, Mike's story reminded me of my own days as a tree child and of the inevitable fall from the tree to the ground. So, this thesis leads us to believe that every topic sentence and every body paragraph is going to be supporting this idea of reflection on a childhood and the maturation process, as there is this descent from dreaming to reality for this speaker. So let's see if the topic sentences support the thesis. First topic sentence, my childhood was a playground for the imagination. Well, that clearly relates back to this thesis. If you're in a more argumentative essay, there might be a stronger connection, but for a personal descriptive essay, this connection works. But in the summer, it was different, softer. This doesn't quite clearly tie into the thesis, though it does segue from the paragraph above. And in this essay that is acceptable, though perhaps these two paragraphs could be combined into a stronger cohesive paragraph that clearly supports this thesis. Those summer trips to Milwaukee were greatly anticipated events back then, and the basement was better than a toy story. All of these sentences are progressing through the reflection that the speaker wants you to follow with them, reminding them of their childhood. You're walking through this childhood and arriving at that point of maturation and the speaker's conclusions about that. So that is why these topic sentences work as a connection with that thesis. Now, do the body paragraphs connect with the topic sentence? There is strong, tight connection between topic sentence and supporting evidence in this essay. It's perhaps one of its strongest aspects. So this idea of the childhood being a playground for imagination, do we have specific things that support that? Well, we have a clear evidence of that imagination sort of going wild as the speaker describes their grandparents' house and everything in the winter lined up like, what is the language? White-bearded old generals with icicles hanging from their mustaches. That description gives us a concrete example of the way this speaker imagined the setting, the space where they were having their childhood. And that they were always imagining things while they were there. Now, this idea that the neighborhood that's icy old generals thaws in the summer is this topic sentence, and we see that thawing in the body paragraph, in the supporting evidence, We see kids playing stickball, elegant grass-stained tea parties with a neighborhood girl. We see the honeybees and the garden and the warm smells and the sky that looks like an east. All of these details emphasize something soft, something warm, and go back to this idea of an idyllic, imaginative childhood. Who doesn't want to have a tea party on the grass with the friend next door? Who doesn't wish they were doing that right now instead of reading this essay? And this sentence, we have something that we said earlier you really should avoid, which is repetition. Well, how does repetition work here? We couldn't wait, we couldn't wait, we couldn't wait. Most of all, we couldn't wait to go down to the basement. The basement is this ironic treehouse that this speaker has. And it's in that treehouse, which is underground rather than in a tree, that the speaker has this maturation, which leads to them finally concluding they're a shrub child rather than a tree child. They can look up at the sky and dream, but they can also reach the ground and embrace reality because of their experiences in this basement treehouse. And so this anticipation that builds up to this basement being a magnificent thing works here because it supports the overall purpose and message of this essay. And finally, the idea of the basement being a toy store, that's enchanting, is supported with very specific details. Old-fashioned milk cabinet in the kitchen wall was enchanting. If you've ever seen, that's a concrete thing. And this idea of the laundry chute, now we have action verbs and descriptors that let us relive an activity. It's big enough to throw down Ernie, my stuffed dog companion, so my brother could catch him below in the laundry room as our voices echoed up and down the chute. Even if you have never had this experience, which I have had, this recreates that memory for you with action, with sound, with sight, with tactile, because how big this space is, the action they're doing, throwing this dog up and down and shouting to each other as their voices go up and down this chute. That experience, we can see how that might be more exciting than a toy store for a student. For the speaker. And if you have ever done it, it is unbelievably fun as a kid to throw things down that chute and see it hit somebody in the basement. It feels like a magic portal that transports you from one end to the other. So, and all of this leads to this idea of the basement at the end of this portal being magical, being a treehouse. So, that is an essay that works. Next, we're going to look at one that doesn't.